A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Mandy Worby joins me in the studio now. Mandy, there is so much going on in Israel, in Lebanon, and even here in Australia. What's the latest?
Well, as you know, we've just had the 1 year anniversary on Monday since October 7 last year, and that absolutely appalling, demonic attack on Israel from Hamas terrorists in Gaza. Ian and I flew to Canberra early Monday morning. We attended a rally on the Parliament House lawns. It was very successful. Tony Abbott spoke. Our own Dave Pellow spoke. Mark Leach, the former New South Wales Labor, I believe he was in the House of Reps, Mike Kelly. He was amazing. His speech was fantastic. Lots of other politicians, social and religious leaders, and they were excellent. There were two students from the Sydney Uni who spoke, one Jewish, one non-Jewish. They described what life is like on campus for them, the anti-Semitism and the danger that they're facing every day. And they gave a really impassioned call for the silent majority, because we keep hearing this, the silent majority in Australia does not agree with what's going on, in the campuses and in the marches and the streets. And she gave this incredibly impassioned plea to the silent majority to stop being silent, speak up, because if the loud minority have their way, they'll crush the rest of us. So we've got to speak up.
Yep.
There was a lovely rabbi who now lives in Victoria. He spoke about his family immigrating to Australia from Poland, and he remembers being a small child. He shared this at the rally, walking down the streets of Bondi when he was just a little tot, hearing someone call them dirty Jews as they drove past them. And his father looked at his son and smiled and said, "I love this country." And he asked his dad why he said that after what they just heard. He said, "Well, in Poland, they stopped their cars and they beat us up." Now, the rabbi, he's a retired older man now, lovely man, he's a friend of ours, said that in all of his years living in Australia, he had never really ever experienced anti-Semitism at all until October 7. And it was since then it's been ceaseless. And he said that in very shortly after October 7, he and his congregation were in their synagogue in Victoria, in Caulfield. And suddenly the police came in and told them they had to flee because there was a pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas mob marching down their street to get to them. And he said on that night he heard for the very first time in his entire life in Australia the most vile, hate-filled, violent anti-Semitism he'd ever heard in his life. And he struggles that was actually happening right now in Australia. And he was so grateful for the love and the support that was expressed at a Christian event by Christians, from Christians at this event, and as were the Jews in the that were all part of the event. They were really quite overwhelmed at this expression of love because they're not hearing it anywhere else, and they are literally being constantly crushed in the media. People were dancing to Israeli songs, and there were some young Jewish students who'd said they didn't want to dance because of what the day meant. But when Christians got up and danced to Israeli music, these young Jews got up and they danced as well, arm in arm. And it was really a very, very special event.
It sounds like it. But isn't it sad, Mandy, that in modern Australia that the state government police forces can't protect people against bullies? That when that mob was marching towards a synagogue, that we couldn't protect the synagogue. Yeah,
and I don't understand that. And what I also don't understand, why there was no consequences for those in the marches. Even the what's being spoken in mosques, what's being chanted on the streets. I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe that we have anti-terrorism laws in this country and hate speech laws in this country that, if they were implemented, would put a stop to it. But they don't seem to be, having an effect, or nobody wants to enforce them.
Yeah, not being enforced.
No.
And there was also a memorial event at the Israeli embassy.
Yes, it was really quite moving. Ian and I were invited to attend. Really honoured to do that. We've become quite good friends with the ambassador, Amir Maimon, and his wife and their team there. We kind of got in touch with them when they first came to Australia, so long before October 7. So we were very honoured to attend. It was a sombre event, as you can imagine: music, video presentations, speeches, stories from that fateful day last year, which were heart-wrenching. There were other dignitaries and MPs there, including Penny Wong, Bill Shorten, Tony Abbott. My own federal member, Bert Van Manen, was there. I've met with him numerous times, and I was really touched by him because he had tears in his eyes when he was talking about what the Jewish people have experienced and endured, and how impressed he is by their resilience, what an incredible people they are. So the evening obviously was about remembering those who were slaughtered by Hamas, those who survived Hamas, those who are still being held captive by Hamas, and Israel's unwavering commitment to get rid of Hamas and Hezbollah and returning their people home. It was a night to remember, and I've got to tell you that all through Monday, all through the day on October 7, my phone was going off with alerts telling me that Israel was under rocket fire attack from both Hezbollah in the north and Hamas in the south. It did not stop all day.
Yeah, and that was how the Hamas and Hezbollah terrorists reacted to the anniversary, by trying to kill more people in Israel. But what is happening in Lebanon right now, Mandy?
Okay, well, I've got a Lebanese friend who's been keeping me updated on 3 Christian villages in southern Lebanon. They're all in grave danger from Hezbollah. The last few weeks, UNIFIL has been keeping these are peacekeepers, they've been keeping them semi-safe, marginally successful. But 2 days ago, a Christian village of Ramik was bombed by Hezbollah because the village won't allow Hezbollah to use their village to make attacks against Israel, because it would turn them into a target when Israel responds. So because they won't allow Hezbollah to use them as human shields and targets, Hezbollah has accused them of being quote-unquote Zionists, and they're now attacking their own communities. There are more Hezbollah terrorist leaders who have been eliminated in strategic strikes by the IDF. Huge weapon storage depots in Beirut have been destroyed. The IDF had also, this is an interesting one, they destroyed a very symbolic memorial by the Iranian regime in Marun al-Ras. On the 15th of February in 2020, Hezbollah erected a statue of Qasem Soleimani, who was killed during President Trump's rule, I believe. And they put this statue of him up in Marun al-Ras Park. The statue of Soleimani was actually pointing directly toward Israel with a Palestinian flag waving behind it. And the monument now lays in rubbles, and there is an Israeli flag flying in its place. I believe that would be quite a blow to the Iranian regime.
Well, it reminds me of that verse, Mandy, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. So everything the Iranians are doing seems to be failing. But what about these tunnels in Lebanon? Yeah,
the IDF have found quite a few of them. And when they've found them stocked with, they're all got electricity, lights, flushing toilets, showers, sleeping quarters, refrigerators filled with fresh food, as well as weapons and ammunition, and their plans for infiltrating and committing terror attacks in northern Israel, in the northern Galilee region. Israel's got them, they've examined them, they're destroying them, but they did find one. It's a small one, and it was simply for incursion, and it went under the border into Israel. It was simply to get terrorists into Israel to commit terror attacks. It was in the Marwahin area. It's now destroyed. I mean, the potential for disaster in northern Israel from Hezbollah cannot be underestimated, and Israel's not going to tolerate it anymore.
Yeah, and what about the IDF? What's going on with the IDF at the moment?
This I found really interesting because it reminds me of, and I've got to confess, it reminds me of a passage of scripture that I can't actually find, and when I do find it, I'll bring it to your attention. But this is from the IDF, and I read this morning, and it says this: on October 1st, Iran launched a large-scale aerial attack against the citizens of the State of Israel, firing over 180 ballistic missiles from Iranian soil toward Israeli territory. The IDF, in cooperation with the Israel Police, Fire and Rescue Services, Israel Nature and Parks Authority, local authorities and government officers, have removed 27 remnants of the Iranian missiles fired at Israel during last week's attack. This is what's jumped out at me. The hazardous missile remnants were collected by the IDF engineering equipment under the command of the Homefront Command in coordination with Fire and Rescue Services. The removal of additional remnants is expected to be completed in the coming days. Now, I know there is a verse of scripture that says that when Israel would come under attack, that there would be weapons throughout the country, and that people would see them, they would not touch them, they would put a mark or identify where they are, and then the authorities would come and then clean those up. And I'm frustrated because I can't find that passage of scripture, but when I do, I'll let you know, unless somebody else can let me know what it is. But that's the first thing I thought of.
Yeah.
I thought, God, this is extraordinary.
Incredible, huh? Fulfillment of prophecy.
Yep.
And as always, Mandy, we're going to ask everyone to pray for Israel.
Yes, Israel is fighting on 7 fronts at the moment. This is an unprovoked war after the worst terror attack in history. So please pray for Israel, her leaders, the IDF, and for innocents in all the nations involved. It's not the innocents on the ground who are responsible for this war, but the terrorists and corrupt leaders who have started it. So please pray for them. And I want you to pray according to the scriptures which I mentioned last week, which is Psalm 122. Please look these up. Psalm 122, Zechariah 2:8, Deuteronomy 33:29, and Isaiah 46, verse 4.
Thanks, Mandy. As always, so much going on in Israel and the Middle East and even here in Australia, and we'll check in with you again next week.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.